Oh god, let's do this. The final Rise of Skywalker trailer dropped last night during the NFL game, which for me meant waking up at 3 AM. I'm very tired. Right, let's comb this meticulously for every possible detail, frame by frame, and see what's good, what's bad, and what's ugly about the new Episode 9 trailer. We fade in from black to reveal the silver Lucasfilm logo, with sounds of a forest and the twittering of birds in the background. The scene then fades in to reveal a dense, rich jungle or forest, which we assume to be Endor, given what we know about the film so far. But I think it's now been confirmed by another source not to be Endor, so I don't really know. Whatever planet this is, it's full of very earthly plants like ferns and giant redwoods, so I don't really know. Rey then runs into shot carrying her lightsaber, which she's somehow now fixed. Dropping or kicking out of the way a resistance helmet, which looks sort of similar to the ones the bomber pilots were wearing in The Last Jedi, but it also looks very similar to the ones that Luke and Leia wore during the speeder bike chase on Endor in Return of the Jedi. This is all probably to do with her training, since we do see her doing some training on this planet in one of the previous trailers. She even deflects a couple of blaster bolts from a small spherical training droid, like the one that Luke uses in A New Hope. And oh boy, this is just the beginning of all the callbacks to the OT that J.J. Abrams has in this trailer.
It's an instinct.
We then get a shot of her feet while she's running with possibly Kylo saying,
It's an instinct.
as she runs towards a chasm. And then we get quite a cool shot of where she begins her jump across the chasm, and the scene cuts immediately to her finishing a jump on the wreckage of the Death Star. I just thought that was kind of a cool transition. On the left, we can see a walkway and a doorway with what appear to be the elongated light strips of the Death Star's famous interior design on its right. And the big column in the middle of the shot also looks like the tractor beam controls from A New Hope. This scene here is also very reminiscent of the Star Destroyer wreckage on Jakku that Rey scavenges from in The Force Awakens. She then climbs up, panting onto the metalwork as the voiceover continues.
Feeling.
We then fade to Finn, looking through a pair of binoculars on the desert planet of Pasaana, most likely towards the festival that we saw in the previous trailer, as the voiceover of Kylo continues again, saying,
The Force brought us together.
Wait, so the Force is now just an instinct? What? I thought it was Snoke that brought you two together? What? Huh? We then transition back to Endor with Rey running along the top of a cliff into a shot of what appears to be some sort of hangar filled with members of the Resistance. Which, I have to ask, how did they grow this big? The last we saw of them, the entire Resistance could fit on the Millennium Falcon, and from what I remember, they couldn't even get through to Leia's allies, so what? We see X-Wing pilots in red jumpsuits, bombardiers in their sort of khaki jumpsuits, and several in white overalls, which we haven't seen yet so far in the sequel trilogy. But we do know that B-Wing pilots in the OT wore white jumpsuits, so that might become apparent later. It will become apparent later. They're all looking toward a central spot where we can see 3PO, Lando, Admiral Akbar's son, possibly the back of Billy Lord's character, and Poe Dameron over on the right giving a speech, saying,
We're not alone.
in voiceover. My guess is that this is actually taking place underneath the Corellian blockade runner, the ship that looks like the Tantive 4 from A New Hope, just by the way the turrets are positioned. Also, is Hagrid now in Star Wars? We then get a shot of Rose, in I think her only appearance in this entire trailer, walking down a corridor with two characters behind her. The one on the left, I think, is the bloke who plays, is it Merry or Pippin in Lord of the Rings? I always confuse the two. And the other, I think, is Billy Lord's character. So they might be accompanying Rose on her part of the story, whatever it is. Also, I do have to say that Rose looks a lot better, design-wise, in this film than The Last Jedi. It is strange, however, because the three of them seem to be walking the opposite way to everyone else. We can assume those are also resistance, or at least a set of people, possibly this new Jana character's people who join up with the resistance by the end, as we can see one of the Space Horse things from the Vanity Fair article riding in the background. So this might be on board a resistance ship, or it could be sort of in the streets of some unknown planet. We don't really know. Poe's monologue continues, saying,
Good people will fight if we lead them.
as the shot transitions to one of him, Finn and Chewie standing by his black X-Wing on Endor. So Rey isn't there alone, looking up at something which might be the blockade runner which we see in the next shot, but the way trailers are cut these days, we really have no idea, do we? I do like this shot of the blockade runner brushing the tops of the trees, however. I think it does a great job of establishing the size and scale of these huge ships. However, the amount of times that this technique is used in this trailer is absolutely unbelievable.
People keep telling me they know me.
We then move to a raging, stormy ocean with what most people take to be the wreckage of the Death Star, which, yeah, it is. Now, if this is Endor, that would be cool to show that not all planets in Star Wars have the same geography and geology all over. However, it was established in Return of the Jedi that Endor was a forest moon, so that's unlikely. What's more probable is that this is a different moon of the Endor system onto which some of the wreckage has fallen. Also, one thing I want to bring up, didn't the Death Star just blow up in like a nuclear explosion? Didn't it just get evaporated? How is there this much wreckage left? We see Rey with her lightsaber on top of the wreckage near to a semicircular gun turret as she says,
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
yeah, well, no one does know who you are, Rey, so at least you got that right. She stares towards a shadowy figure emerging from the spray of the waves in front of her, which is revealed to be a soaking, bedraggled Kylo Ren, saying,
I do.
with then a close-up of his sopping wet face in a shot that's absolutely hilarious and will be memed into extinction. Also, if the movie makes a point about him fixing his mask that he destroyed in The Last Jedi, why is he not wearing it now? Like, what's the point of fixing your helmet if you're not going to wear it? Jesus Christ, this series is a mess. Just a little stream of water running out of his chin. He then does a weird flip of his lightsaber so that he's holding it in a downward position, which is very reminiscent of Starkiller from The Force Unleashed. As it then cuts to on a small squadron of TIE fighters zooming towards some sort of flat ice world that I'm going to call Jotunheim. The physics of this are just... I'm not even going to try, which... some people think might be a frozen cloud city or a giant frozen Star Destroyer, but I'm not convinced by that. I mean, it looks cool, don't get me wrong, but really, how the heck does gravity work in Star Wars if this kind of thing's possible? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Long have I waited.
And then, very cool, but very confusing, we get what looks like the Emperor's throne from Return of the Jedi, except it isn't. It's all Game of Thronesy, but made of stone with lightning. And what is this then, if this isn't his throne on the Death Star? It's actually based on some artwork that Ralph McQuarrie did when designing the Emperor's throne, so that's where the design comes from, but really? Also, it's not surprising at all that this has so many callbacks to Return of the Jedi. I mean, The Force Awakens was a remake of A New Hope. Last Jedi took so many beats from both Empire and Return of the Jedi that yeah, no, there's no surprises here at all. Palpatine's voice is then heard saying,
Long have I waited.
which seems to suggest he didn't die in Return of the Jedi, and that he somehow survived and has been living out a sheltered existence somewhere lying in wait to be able to return. Which... I have so many questions, particularly with something later in the trailer, and oh boy, we will be getting to that. And look, I've made my position on Palpatine returning very clear. I do not want it. I love Palpatine, he's one of my favourite characters, but I do not want to see him in this film. His arc was completed, along with Anakin's, in Return of the Jedi, and it was a fitting end to both. So to actually have him survive and return out of literally nowhere with no foreshadowing from 2 previous films just feels like fan service, which I don't have a problem with necessarily, unless it affects the story in a big way. I think this affects the story in a big way. If I was told I had to somehow put Sheev in episode 9 to please the fans, I personally wouldn't have brought him back. I would have had him as a recorded hologram. Similar in premise to the Battlefront 2 campaign, where he's still dead, but his contingency plans can still have an effect on the galaxy. And that this hologram may be found in the Death Star wreckage, and that's how we see him. But nope, this is not what we are getting. We're getting something far more stupid. Then we get another ship-size establishing shot as a First Order Star Destroyer rises from an ocean. So, what was up with all those Imperial-era Star Destroyers from the last trailer? Has Palpatine just been keeping a production line going as his, like, weekend job when he's been hiding from not dying?
And now,
We then get a shot of hundreds of Resistance ships forming up, possibly to battle it out with all those Star Destroyers. And there's a lot to break down here. First of all, why are they so close to each other? Any movement from any of those and they'll just crash into each other and just destroy the entire fleet. And if they've hyperspaced here into this formation, surely you've got to be absolutely nanometer precise. If you are even slightly off, you'd be, oh, well, the whole fleet's fucked. So, in this shot, we are doing a breakdown as well. I forgot about that. We have the Ghost, a Hammerhead Corvette, the Eravana, Han Solo's cargo ship, a Rebel U-Wing, some Last Jedi bombers, a Nebulon B frigate from Return of the Jedi on the right there, the ship from the Mandalorian, the Razor Crest possibly, a Clone Wars medical frigate that we also saw in Rebels, and loads of other sort of escort ships that we saw in The Last Jedi and other things. Anyway, there's a lot here that we can break down. This feels very much like the Death Star attack in Return of the Jedi, but that was impressive because it was 1983 and it was all practical effect. But this is just, meh. There's so much CG, it just looks like a video game. Finn, Poe, and 3PO then walk into the cockpit of the Falcon to join Rey and Chewie, and I still hate the fact that Chewie wasn't the one to inherit the Falcon from his friend. Fuck you, Disney. Also on the dashboard of the Falcon, there's some MacGuffin thing, which might be something like the compass that Luke has in The Last Jedi that was in the Battlefront 2 campaign, and maybe that's like directing them towards where Palpatine is. I have no idea, but that's probably going to be the MacGuffin thing for this film. Also, what's the point? You've got Rey piloting the Falcon with Poe behind her, who is the best pilot in the Resistance, according to your own canon. Why not just have Poe piloting the Falcon? Are you fucking dumb? All while this is going on, Palpatine is saying,
and now, your coming together is your undoing.
which I assume is directed at Rey and Kylo, who will inevitably join forces to defeat the Emperor once and for all, which is just remaking the end of Return of the Jedi again. We then get Rey and Kylo fighting on the wreckage, again, with Kylo's CGI cape, into a quick shot of something exploding in space, which I really hope is not the Falcon, as was hinted in a recent article. And then some ship, which I think is the one we see Finn and the new character, Jana or something, flying in the previous trailer, skimming over the waves towards the super laser eye of the Death Star. And then, oh boy, we have the 3PO scene. In the previous trailer, we saw him with red eyes, and a leak suggested that it might be something to do with him having to be hooked up to some sort of mainframe to get some information or something. And this new little monkey thing appears to be the engineer doing this. And then we get BB-8 and this new little piece of merchandising, of course, who I think is called Dio, and he looks terrible. We then get a shot of Poe asking 3PO,
What are you doing there, 3PO?
why don't you know? Surely whatever's going on has been planned to happen by you or someone. I doubt 3PO is going to just give himself like a robobotomy on his own, is he? Why don't you know what's going on? This shot also introduces us to the character of Zori Bliss on the left there, a new bounty hunter character who will join our heroes. Also a quick note, all three of our heroes are wearing the same coat for some reason, and there's a medical droid there in the background. And then we get a very controversial line that has many people divided. 3PO replies with,
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
What? Now, it is unclear whether he is referring to the three heroes standing in front of him, which, I mean, you don't even know these people, 3PO. You haven't even spent time with them. Okay, you spent like an hour or so with Poe in The Last Jedi, stuck in a room with him. You've never met Rey. You've barely met Finn. Are these your friends? Now, it's unclear as to whether he actually means that, or whether he's sort of seeing in his mind, if you will, like R2, Chewie, Han, Luke, and Leia, which is what I hope it is, because you don't even know these people, 3PO. They're not your friends. Particularly as the next two shots are then of him and R2 and Chewie. The other bit of controversy is that 3PO will die in this film. I don't buy that. I think what will happen is that he'll be plugged into the mainframe to get this information, which will somehow wipe his memory banks, or will require his memory banks to be wiped to be able to do it. Like he has them wiped at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, Your Highness. I'm placing these droids in your care. Treat them well, clean them up. Have the protocol droids' mind wiped.
What? Which actually would be an even sadder ending for him. Like, if he's just destroyed, you can just rebuild him. He's a robot. Don't tell Lando that, though.
It's all right. Save energy. I'm gonna get you out of here. All right?
But having his memory wiped of all of his adventures with R2 and the legacy characters in the OT, that would actually be quite a moving scene. Also, a couple of things left with this shot. You can see a B1 battle droid behind 3PO on his right, and the circular grill thing behind him looks very similar to the lower levels of Cloud City. Perhaps confirming that our heroes return here in the movie, and that's where this is taking place. We then get a shot of Poe, Finn and Chewie gunning their way down a hallway on a First Order Star Destroyer, and note that Chewie is holding a Stormtrooper's E11 blaster, not his usual bowcaster. I wonder where that's gone.
Confronting fear.
And then it's Leia hugging Rey using retooled footage from The Force Awakens, which is a bit weird, not gonna lie, but okay. And this also seems to be taking place on Endor, or rather the planet speculated that might be Endor, with Luke saying,
Confronting fear. It's the destiny of a Jedi.
is it though? I thought you said failure was the destiny of the Jedi.
Strip away the myth and look at their deeds. The legacy of the Jedi is failure.
Oh my god, you fucking hypocrite, Luke. What the fuck is wrong with you? Literally for the last 30 years, you were scared of something and then went into hiding and wouldn't do anything about it.
He would bring destruction and pain and death at the end of everything I love because of what he will become. And for the briefest moment of pure instinct, I thought I could stop it.
How? That's not the destiny of a Jedi. You're a Jedi. What the fuck is wrong with you, Luke? We then switch to a shot of BB-8 peeping out of a skiff on the desert planet of Pasana, with Chewie's legs in the background there, stabbing a canister which is then thrown up into the air, causing an explosion of yellow paint or powder or something, probably to blind the stormtroopers on the speeder bikes chasing them. There also appear to be a pair of ships in the sky, but they're really too small to be able to tell what they are. We then get Finn whooping and having fun while they're being chased by soldiers who want to kill them, which, okay, Finn, you do you. We then get a quick shot of Lando and Chewie in the Falcon, possibly forming up in that big conglomeration of hundreds of ships from earlier in the trailer. before moving on to a view of the underside of an Imperial Star Destroyer and Zori Bliss's Y-Wing taking out a TIE Dorito. At the top of the frame you might also be able to see what could be another old Rebel U-Wing, or it might be a couple of other Y-Wings. Actually, I think there are a couple of Y-Wings. Luke continues saying,
Your destiny.
so Rey's now a Jedi then.
Destiny.
As we see more clearly the huge cannon underneath the Star Destroyer, which we saw pummeling a mountainous planet in the other trailer. And the Y-Wing shooting at it in hopes of destroying it. Again, quite why we have these Imperial Star Destroyers is a mystery to me. They've now been confirmed not to be a flashback or a vision or anything with this, so how on earth do the First Order, or Palpatine, whoever's using them, have the resources to fund and build and man this fleet of thousands of Star Destroyers? What? We then have a shot of all those weird horse things galloping across the top of the Star Destroyer. What? These are being led up front by Finn and Jana, and BB-8 somehow magically keeping up with them. What? How did these horse things get here? I'm guessing this battle's not in space. I mean, really, a bunch of horses versus a Star Destroyer? Are you fucking dumb? We then get The Story Lives Forever, as Rey and an unmasked Kylo meet in the Emperor's throne room on the Death Star, which is clearly not the throne room we saw before, so what? Also, why? How? What? I thought the Death Star was literally vaporized. How is there this much of it left? There's even glass in the windows and like bolts and stuff on the floor that have just like barely moved from an entire nuclear explosion inside it and then it falling onto a planet. What? It got vaporized. Why is this even here? And then we get a shot of Finn running along all this wreckage towards something which we assume is the fight between Kylo and Rey, and see him shouting something which very much looks like the word Rey. We then get quite a cool looking interior shot that isn't grey or blue for a change. It's a we're on a First Order Star Destroyer. And I guess probably something to do with the Knights of Ren. It might be some sort of shrine room or temple room or, I don't know, something like that. And Rey and Kylo, now masked again, smashing something, some statue of some kind. I initially thought that this was a Knight of Ren, because we saw Kylo bodying one in an earlier trailer. But now I'm not so sure. It might be a statue of Darth Vader, if this is something to do with the Knights of Ren, some sort of shrine to him. And then right at the end of the shot, just as it begins to transition, Kylo's hand moves up and begins to remove his helmet. So, what's he doing here? Anyway, it transitions to a shot of Poe, Finn and 3PO with a mysterious green light behind them with what looks like a red material backdrop, leading me to believe that this is some sort of tent or something at the festival that they were looking over at earlier. We then fade back to the horses stupidly running along a Star Destroyer again. Or it actually might be some sort of dockyard for the Star Destroyers. I'm not quite sure. Again, with more Imperial era Star Destroyers in the background. Seriously, if this is a Star Destroyer, they're running... Can't a Star Destroyer just like tilt slightly and just they're just dead? A TIE Dorito then flies overhead above Finn, Jana, BB-8 and the rest of the cavalry. It pans up and an X-Wing and a B-Wing fly in to then chase the TIEs. And we get a better shot of nearly 40 Star Destroyers in this one shot alone. Seriously, where did all of these come from? Yet another shot of an unmasked Kylo, and then, oh boy, we finally get the shot I mentioned earlier. A full, alive, corporeal Emperor.
Oh no!
This boy is not a hologram or a Force ghost. No, he's actually alive! What the fuck? And he appears to be sat in a walking throne that's slowly moving towards Rey. Well, that might just be the way the camera's moving, to be honest, but... Oh, Jesus Christ. What you doing, JJ? I mean, if I was in charge of marketing, I wouldn't have shown Palpatine at all in any of these trailers. I wouldn't have had him say anything. I wouldn't have even acknowledged he's in the film. Left it as a huge surprise, kind of a bit like they did with Yoda in The Last Jedi. Because now it's like you're bringing back the main villain thought to have been dead since 1983, and now you just show him in the trailer. Like, really? You're gonna waste that? What? Oh, fuck me. And then finally we get a shot of Rey looking at someone with her lightsaber ignited as Luke begins saying,
The Force will be with you.
and it's then finished by Leia,
Always.
which is a nice touch, I must admit, especially as the trailer came out the day of her birthday, her 63rd birthday. And it's nice that she gets the last word. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So, very much a mixed bag of a trailer. There are some cool visuals, some neat ideas. I like the fact that Chewie and 3PO might be getting a bit more screen time, which they've both been sorely lacking. But I'm also very apprehensive of all of this Palpatine and Empire stuff. I think the best analogy I can come up with at the moment is The Rise of Skywalker is like a car trying to jump across a level crossing with a train coming. There's a very small, minute possibility that the car will just miss the train and be successful, reuniting the fan base once and for all, being a fantastic film. There's a much higher chance of the car mostly making it, but being clipped on the back end by the train, partially destroying the car and leaving it a wreck, i.e. splitting the fan base yet again with some poor decisions made in the film to do with story and character that to some people are just unforgivable, but also does try to fix it by reuniting the fan base by counting on nostalgia for the older films and bringing back like Palpatine and stuff like that. But there's an even higher chance that the car won't make it at all and will just be totally sideswiped by the train, decimating and obliterating the car. So clearly this film doesn't mean Disney or Lucasfilm are out of the woods yet. With 75% of the movie rumoured to being reshot and at least 6 different endings in the works, with none of them really gelling with test audiences, I'm inclined to think that the most likely outcome of the train analogy will be the latter. And that's a shame. I want to like this film. I want to like the whole sequel trilogy, but I don't. Anyway, there are some Easter eggs and our thoughts on the final trailer, so let us know in the comments what you thought of the trailer and what you think of the film as we head towards opening night in December. And with that, may the Force be with you. Always.